April 1977. The sun was rising over the highways of Northern California. A young woman stood by the side of the road with a backpack, her long blonde hair blowing gently in the morning wind. She was 20 years old. Her name was Colleen Stan. She had a bright smile, an adventurous spirit, and the quiet confidence of someone who believed the world was mostly good. That morning, she was simply trying to get from Oregon to a friend's birthday party in California. She had hitchhiked before. Nothing had ever gone wrong. But in just a few minutes, she would step into a car that would change her life forever. For the next 7 years, she would live in darkness, locked inside a wooden box, controlled by fear, and manipulated by two people who would convince her that escape meant death. This is the terrifying true story of the girl in the box. The 7-year captivity of Colleen Stan. In 1977, hitchhiking wasn't unusual, especially in parts of the American West. Young travelers often relied on the kindness of strangers, and Colleen was one of them. She had grown up in a normal American household. Friends described her as gentle, friendly, and trusting, but that trust would soon be tested. On May 19, 1977, Colleen began hitchhiking south along Interstate 5. She turned down several rides. Something didn't feel right about them. Then a blue van pulled over. Inside were two people, a young woman and her husband. Their names were Cameron Hooker and Janice Hooker. The presence of a woman made Colleen feel safer, so she accepted the ride. It would become the worst decision of her life. At first, everything seemed normal. They chatted politely as the van drove down the highway. Janice sat quietly. Cameron did most of the talking, but as the miles passed, the mood began to change. Cameron suddenly pulled off the road. Without warning, he attacked Colleen. He pulled a knife and forced a strange wooden box over her head. The device covered her entire head. Inside it were screws and padding designed to block sound and light. She couldn't see. She could barely hear. She couldn't scream. Her world went completely dark. Then Cameron tied her up and placed her in the back of the van. For the next several hours, Colleen lay trapped in that box, terrified, not knowing if she would live or die. Eventually, the van stopped. They had arrived at the Hooker's home in Red Bluff. Cameron dragged Colleen inside, but instead of killing her, he had something else in mind, something far more disturbing. Cameron had been planning this for years. He had fantasies about enslaving a woman, total control, total domination, and now he believed he had found the perfect victim. He built a coffin-sized wooden box, just large enough for a human body. This would become Colleen's prison. The box was about 6 feet long, barely 2 feet high. Colleen could not sit up. She could barely move. For 23 hours a day, she was locked inside it, under the Hooker's bed, in complete darkness. The only time she was allowed out was when Cameron wanted to use her. But the physical prison wasn't the worst part. The real prison was psychological. Cameron told Colleen about a secret organization. He called it the Company. He claimed they were watching her. If she tried to escape, they would kill her family. He convinced her they had spies everywhere. Phones were tapped. Letters were monitored. Even police couldn't help her. It was all a lie. But after months of isolation and fear, Colleen began to believe it. Over time, Cameron created strict rules. Colleen was forced to call him Master. She was punished if she disobeyed. Sometimes she was chained, sometimes beaten, sometimes forced into humiliating situations. But what made the situation even more disturbing was Janice. At first, Janice had been shocked by Cameron's violence. But instead of leaving him, she became part of it. She helped maintain the secret. She watched Colleen suffer and said nothing. Meanwhile, the outside world had no idea where Colleen had gone. Her family searched desperately, but there were no clues, no witnesses, no evidence. She had simply vanished. Years passed, and something unexpected happened. Cameron began to trust Colleen. He allowed her small freedoms. She started working outside the house, but always under strict rules. She was never to reveal the truth, because the company was watching. She believed they would kill her family if she talked. So she stayed silent, even when she visited her own parents. Yes, after years in captivity, Cameron allowed Colleen to visit her family, and she still said nothing. The psychological control was that strong. But everything changed in 1984. Janice could no longer live with the guilt, the years of abuse, the lies, the horror happening in her own home. One night, she confronted Cameron. She demanded he release Colleen. Instead, Cameron revealed the truth. There was no secret organization. The company didn't exist. It had all been a lie. For 7 years. When Janice heard this, something inside her broke. Janice went to Colleen and told her the truth. There was no company, no assassins, no spies. For the first time in 7 years, Colleen realized she could leave. And she did. Soon after, Janice reported Cameron to the police. In 1985, Cameron Hooker was arrested. The trial shocked the nation. People struggled to understand how someone could be held captive for 7 years and still appear free at times. But experts explain it clearly. This was psychological imprisonment, a powerful form of manipulation, one that can trap the mind as much as chains trap the body. Cameron Hooker was eventually sentenced to 104 years in prison. Colleen Stan survived. And today, her story remains one of the most chilling kidnapping cases in American history. For 7 years, Colleen Stan lived in darkness, locked in a box, controlled by fear. Yet somehow, she survived. Her story reminds us that the most powerful prisons are not always made of walls. Sometimes, they're made of lies.